Welcome to Founder Stories with Mona Juneja. This is the podcast you'll wish you found sooner. In each episode, I talk to founders who left their 9 to 5 to build their own business. They share mistakes, late nights, and the moments they almost gave up. If you have been thinking of starting something, these stories will give you the push you need. So let's get started. My guest today is Matyas. Matyas, welcome to this podcast. We are so
Thank
happy
you.
to have you with us. So, Matthias, it'll be great to start with your introduction. Where are you from and where are you based?
Hi guys, and Mona. My name's Matyas, as you guys have heard. I grew up in Australia, but have been living in Vietnam for 8 years now. It's been a wild and fun and exciting time living in Saigon, so Ho Chi Minh City. But about 4 months ago, I decided that living in a city of 12 million people is probably a little bit much, and I would like to try maybe like a different location, a different city that's maybe a little bit more chilled out. So I spent a couple of months, about 2 months in Da Nang, which I really enjoy, and also in a couple of months in Hoi An as well, which is only about 30 minutes drive south of there. Which is, yeah, I mean, it's currently flooding, so not the best time, but it's a beautiful place as well. So yeah, so that's where I've been sort of located. Also, having my parents in Australia means that I visit there probably about 2 or 3 times a year thereabouts, depending on timing. So I do also get to travel quite a bit.
Okay, great. And Matthias, what do you do here in Vietnam?
So I have a business in Australia that I run remotely. So basically, it's an automotive events business called Downshift, and I've had that since 2009. I first started running events, and so basically, like that was a passion project for me because that's sort of one of my interests is sports cars and modifying them and the community around that. So it sort of started off being just a very casual meeting of like-minded people coming together in a shopping center car park on a once a month on like a Wednesday night or whatever it is, and I guess over time it's grown from that to then eventually being sort of like a very regular monthly thing with like a hired venue and insurance and all of those things. And so I mean, at this point in 2025, we're getting sort of anywhere near sort of 800 to 1,000 people turning up to each event, obviously plus or minus sort of 200. So depending on weather and other events happening, it can be more or less than that. Mostly less, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So yeah, so that's basically what I do. I run the online part of things from here in Vietnam. So basically, that's the graphic design, social media management, advertising, all of that sort of stuff. Whatever I can do online, I do that. And then I've also got a couple of event managers or team leaders, I suppose you could call them, who work for me in Australia, who have their own team to actually like physically run the event on the ground. And I'm very fortunate that they're very capable people and they're great to work with. So it allows me to sort of be remote, which I guess is not really for a business purpose. It's entirely a lifestyle choice. The business would obviously it would be a lot easier to grow it and to do more things with it if I was in Australia. But I mean, that would be a wildly different lifestyle or life compared to what I have now.
Okay, great. So, Matthias, how's life different in Vietnam than in Australia? How's running your business different in Vietnam? So, do you have a team present in Hoi An?
No, 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 no. So it's basically my team that I work with in Australia. They're sort of the only team that I have. But in Vietnam, it's really just myself. So most of the time I'm either working from a co-working space or a cafe, doing those online aspects of things and phone-based aspects of things that I mentioned. And then like when I visit Australia, obviously I sort of do whatever I need to do. To make sure the business runs smoothly and cleanly and all of those things, meeting with the accountants or the venue managers or whatever it is. So yeah, basically that's the deal. And then, in terms of like where I live in Vietnam, that's fortunately pretty flexible because the time zone is only 3 hours different to Brisbane, my hometown. And also, so the time zone is totally fine. And also there's ubiquitous, fantastic internet everywhere, pretty much in Vietnam, even in the countryside. So, it really does. It's a huge benefit, fortunately.
Yeah, yeah. So I am also in Da Nang right now as we speak. My husband and I, we are traveling full time. We started our trip from Hanoi and then we moved towards Ninh Bình and now we are in Da Nang. So this is our third week in Da Nang. And unfortunately, it's been raining every day. We haven't been able to do much, but just on calls, working from cafes, co-working places. We walked all the way to Lady Buddha the other day. Yeah, so it
Yep.
was because we just got 2 days of no rain in the last 3 weeks. Yeah, so it's been crazy. But Matthias, coming back, so did you, before starting, because in this podcast, what we do is we want to inspire people who still have a 9 to 5 job or who have transitioned from 9 to 5 to be their own boss. So did you have a 9 to 5 job before opening your own company?
Yeah, so basically, I did my university at one of the top university in my state, Queensland, University of Queensland, and that led me into getting a job working for the state government, which I did for sort of 6.5 years. Um, and towards the end of that, like I'd always been interested in vehicle, like in cars, which was sort of my passion and my hobby, and out of something that I genuinely enjoyed, that's where I sort of started doing it sort of on a more regular basis. Now going from working in an office job that was like fairly easy and chill and being treated very well and being paid a reasonable amount, and being able to dress nicely at work and have professional colleagues was really nice. It's got a lot of positives to it. However, I had this one specific experience. There'd been probably in the last couple of years of me working there, there was this kind of nagging feeling that it's all like pretty conservative, and I didn't really feel like I was making a huge difference in terms of people's lives, despite the fact that I was working for the health system, which people's health is maybe the most important thing in their lives, right? So you would think that that would be a place where I would be able to make a really big impact. But I guess because it was office work and sort of somewhat bureaucratic, I didn't really have that feeling. So that had been kind of nagging at me for a couple of years, despite the money being good and the conditions being good, and having a very clear line of progression where I could have moved to. I didn't really see myself doing that sort of in 5 or 10 years time from that. And then on top of that, there was one specific thing that happened, which is my line manager, who I used to work with very closely. Um, I came to the office one day and no one's working, and everyone, maybe 100 people on my floor, and no one's working. Everyone looks very alarmed, and so I'm trying to ask my colleagues about, like, what guys, what's going on? This is weird. What's happening? And they said, well, haven't you heard? And I said, no, I've been at a meeting on site. I just got to the office. Can you just tell me? And then basically the paramedics come wheeling her on a stretcher through the hallway to the lift, and then put her in the lift and take her to the hospital. And what had happened is, this lady who was sort of my age currently, I think she was 39 or 40 at the time, she was at the office, everything's completely fine, no significant health issues, nothing. She basically was on the phone to one of the hospital sites and collapsed off her chair onto the ground. And the colleagues called the ambulance, and it turned out she'd had a bleed in the brain. One of the veins in the brain had popped. That's called an aneurysm. And with zero prior warning, there was no previous history of anything like that, and there's not really anything that you can, I guess, like detect with any of this stuff. It's just one day it's your time to go, and a vein or artery pops in the brain, and that's it, you're gone. So yeah, basically, she got very, very, very lucky because the hospital was actually across the street from this office building. So a major arterial in Brisbane, they rushed her across to the hospital and managed to save her life. Shortly thereafter, there was a question about whether the family wanted to keep the life support on. It's some pretty big questions, and sort of at that time I was only about I was maybe 12 years out of that age, so I guess I was about 28 at the time, and that really kind of shook me to my core, and I had a realization that what I'm limited by mostly in this life is not so much money or connections or energy or whatever. It's time. Time is the thing that I'm really limited by, and more importantly, not just am I limited by it, I also don't know in advance how much of it I have. So I think that that kind of that experience really pushed me to pull the trigger about leaving that job. Um, and over the next course of the next sort of 6 months, I pushed harder on the automotive stuff and running events and making that a lot more organized and invested money and time and energy into it, which then started making enough money that I would be able to survive from. And that's when I decided to pull the trigger and basically leave that office job and pursue my own business and sort of take that a lot more seriously and make sure that that was enough to pay the rent.
So you still had a 9 to 5 job when you started your own event company?
Yeah, that's right. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like by event company, think something extremely grassroots.
Yeah.
As I said, we started off being just a group of people who would come together once a month in a shopping center
Sure.
car park to talk about cars. That was it. So, and then it developed from there into, once we had sort of over 100 people turning up monthly in a random shopping center car park, the security would come out and ask us what we're doing. And when we would get kicked out of there because it's not actually it's private property, so we would need their permission to be there.
Yeah.
So obviously we would get kicked out because we're not customers of the shopping center at that moment, at
Yeah.
least. Um, I would come up with sort of like a backup location that we would go to, and so I did that for a couple of months, and that got pretty old pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I thought that I would just look at, well, if we hire a venue, then they can't kick us out. But to hire a venue, you have to pay rent and you need most importantly, public liability insurance. And so I went down that pretty deep rabbit hole about how to get that. And that's really hard to get. That's maybe one of the most difficult parts of starting a business in this area is insurance companies don't want to cover young people who are into cars coming together and doing that. It's just absolutely not on their radar at all. But not only that, it's not their core business, and they don't make much money off it. So why would they take the risk, right? So that's really difficult to obtain. But in the end, I ended up getting both that and a venue, and basically we ended up using that place once a month and have continued on from there. So I mean, at one point, I was running the events in several cities in Australia, being Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and even Canberra. I've had a few events. So, but then when I decided to move to Vietnam, we really cut that back down to just the core, which is Brisbane events.
So, just going back, Matthias, going back to your to the story when you just started, in the shopping mall parking, were you taking any entrance fee to cover your
No.
cost, or was it just so you first
That was
uh,
just a hobby.
build a community? So you
Yeah.
first, got together a lot of people, hundreds of people. You built a community, then you hired a place, and then you must have started charging, right? Because you have to pay for the rent and everything.
Exactly
Okay.
right. Exactly right. Yeah. When we were just using shopping center car parks, obviously that was at no cost to myself, so I wasn't charging
Yeah.
anyone for it. And in fact, I wasn't intending to make it into a business at all. This was a hobby. This was a passion that I really enjoyed at the time, and I wanted to keep it going. And sort of the logical way to keep that going was to hire a venue, but then that came with costs and expenses and wages and
Yeah.
insurance and everything else. So, and I mean, it's thousands of dollars per event. So, I couldn't afford to fund that out of my own pocket, which is why I had to basically ask people to make a contribution if they wanted this kind of thing to exist. And I guess fortunately for me, people decided that they did want a kind of thing like this to exist for them to go to maybe just once a month, and continue that, and that continues over 10 years later.
Okay. I follow someone on LinkedIn. His name is Daniel Priestley, and he is also from Australia, and he
Hmm.
was also into arranging events
Hmm.
for bigger organizations to get them leads. So I'll
Hmm.
I'll forward his details later, but now he's based in the UK and he has a couple of businesses now. Daniel
Ah,
Priestley is his name. Yeah, yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, sure. So, Matthias, how did you choose Vietnam? Did you travel around Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, or did you just come to Vietnam and decided, yeah, Da Nang is the or Saigon is the place?
So I traveled quite a lot. Traveled quite a lot previously, both with my parents when I was younger, as well as by myself when I got older. Especially in Southeast Asia, because that's kind of like the easy access from Australia, which is kind of pretty far from many other things. I mean, other than Southeast Asia, the only thing that's nearby really is New Zealand, in terms of a country. Everything else is really, really far. And like that's back when low cost travel was sort of just becoming a thing. So there was a couple of airlines like AirAsia just started at that time. So that basically gave me access, like easy access to fly from Australia to Southeast Asia. So I traveled to and visited quite a few countries. And the top three where I really enjoyed kind of the energy and the food and the hospitality and sort of people's friendliness. I would say the top three kind of it came down to Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. And I thought, I'll try this out for sort of 3 to 6 months and see what happens. And out of the three, I picked Vietnam because the energy in Ho Chi Minh City and the growth in the and sort of like people's friendliness is just amazing, and I really love it. I probably prefer the food in Vietnam as better than the other two, and it's just my personal preference. And then also, I can't read any of the characters in Thailand, so I thought, this is if I'm here for 3 to 6 months, this is too hard basket. I'd rather try Vietnam, where at least I can read the characters, not the words themselves, but the characters at least. Um, Turns out it's not easy. It looks easier, but I'm not actually sure that it is easier than Thai.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so we haven't been to the Philippines. We've been to Thailand many times, like 15 times or maybe 20 times. I have stopped counting now, and this is our first time in Vietnam. You're right about the characters. Even though the language is so beautiful, Thai language is so beautiful when you hear it, but the characters are, in a different league altogether. But here, at least you can read them because they are in English. But
Mm.
again, Vietnamese, the language is quite hard. Um,
Very difficult tonal language. Yeah.
yeah, and then the Philippines, we are planning to go next year, but we have been speaking with a lot of people, and they say that because Philippines consist of islands, internet might be a problem. We also work during the day,
Yep.
from Monday to Fridays, and in the evenings we explore, and then on the weekends we explore. So we have calls, back-to-back calls during, Monday to Friday during the day. So yeah, so that is,
Accurate. Yep.
yeah,
It's
accurate or.
expensive and not good. I mean, the internet in Philippines specifically. Yeah. I mean, in Manila, it's not as much of a problem, but then as soon as you get sort of out to the islands where it's like, you've got the natural beauty and all of that sort of stuff that you want to see, it's way more of a challenge. Yeah. I quite enjoy sort of local food. I quite enjoy traveling in like the local way in terms of, I love riding motorbikes. That's one of my passions as well. And Vietnam is amazing for that. I mean, Philippines and Thailand is also great for that, especially once you get out of the cities. But in Vietnam, everywhere, you can just ride a bike everywhere. So yeah, I don't need to fly business class or first class into anywhere. That doesn't necessarily do it for me. But on the other hand, like having the freedom, I guess that's kind of been my ultimate sort of focus or ultimate like signal of wealth for myself. Where I said earlier, like because there is good internet here and I have a motorbike in Vietnam, essentially I can be anywhere at any time, and that freedom is really nice. I've been enjoying that a lot over the past 10 years that I've been here, or 8 years.
Great. So you said you've been in Ho Chi Minh City for 8 years, and then you moved to Da Nang, and then in Hoi An.
Exactly.
So how's because Ho Chi Minh is a large city, right? It's a big city, and
It's pretty crazy, yeah.
Hoi An, I haven't been to Hoi An because of the weather and it's flooded, unfortunately. I hear that it's a very small town. Are you able to adjust? Because coming from Australia, then you've been traveling all around, then you chose Ho Chi Minh City for 8 years, and then you moved to Hoi An. How's that adjustment, and what are your long-term plans now?
I guess like moving to Ho Chi Minh, which is a city of roughly 12 million people or so, that was a pretty big adjustment because it's crazy there. It's very noisy, like there's a lot of traffic. But then, on the flip side, it's also got maybe the best food in all of Vietnam because everything is available there from the entire country. I mean, people have been emigrating from the countryside to Ho Chi Minh for many years, and they bring their food with them, which means everything is available from, south to central to northern food, mountain food, everything. You can get everything there. So that's amazing. Having said that, yeah, I mean, I made the decision to go to like maybe a somewhat smaller place, but Da Nang is still a city of 1.1 million people thereabouts. So again, there's certainly no shortage of local food and entertainment options and travel options, and it's got a fantastic airport and business opportunities. So it's got all of the things that you would that you would want. So I don't think the adjustment to go from, so my hometown Brisbane is 2.5 million people. To go from there to Ho Chi Minh, which is 12, that was a big adjustment. But to go from Ho Chi Minh to Da Nang is easy. Hoi An is only like 30,000 people. That's a different thing. And especially like Old Town, so the center of town is very touristy because, well, essentially it's a tourist town. But then outside of that, you have sort of a more like local style life and as well as expats who sort of live here longer term. But it does definitely feel a little small, and especially like small in comparison to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh. So I'm actually thinking that I might be heading back to Da Nang sort of for a longer stay after my next trip, which I have to do a visa run as well as visit some friends in Saigon. So yeah.
Okay, great, great. So, Matthias, we are coming to the end of this podcast, and there's one question which I ask everyone.
Mhm.
If you could go back to day one of your startup, what would you do differently?
I think I would probably push a lot harder to formalize the business and establish teams more clearly in the other cities where I was operating previously on a more ad hoc basis. So my hometown of Brisbane, that's where we've been holding the events monthly since the start of the business. But having also run it a bunch of times in Sydney and only a few times in Melbourne and Canberra, I think there's some big opportunities there to do the exact same thing on a much more serious basis, on a much more formal, well-organized basis. Those things have sort of I've cut those off uh, in the last few years because it sort of was almost more effort than it's worth in a way, especially like trying to handle it from here. But I think if I established those areas more efficiently, more aggressively when I was still living in Australia, I think that could have easily continued on for a longer period of time. Yeah, honestly, even as franchises, that would have been totally fine. So yeah, I think probably pushing a bit harder when I first saw the product market fit, um, and sort of formalizing those things and taking it a bit more seriously at that time. I think that probably would have been a really positive difference.
All right, great, Matthias. Matthias, thank you so much. It was lovely having you with us. Thanks for listening. This episode was sponsored by Bear Connect, an AI powered LinkedIn automation tool that helps you save hours every week. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you follow or subscribe and share it with at least one person who needs a reminder to follow their dream. See you next time.